Alright, how's it going? So, Anthony Joshua, I just want to give my take on his career as a whole. Um, Not to say that his career is completely done, finished, but I think his time near the top of the division is definitely over. Um, so I want to give a brief take of what I think about Anthony Joshua and his career. And I'll come out and say it straight away. I think Joshua is one of the most overrated boxers of our era. Okay? That might sound harsh. I'm not saying he's a hype job. I'm not saying he's a hype job at all. I think he's a good boxer, a solid boxer, good fundamentals, but very basic and just a good solid fighter, not a great, in my opinion. So I'll explain why. Right, first of all, let's just look at Anthony Joshua's best wins. Okay, we know he's lost 4 times, twice to Alexander Usyk. Okay, no shame in that. Usyk's a great fighter. He was just knocked out by Daniel Dubois. And he was also stopped by Andy Ruiz. Okay, let's look at those losses first. The 2 Usyk fights, the 2 losses to Usyk, that's fine, right? You can still be a great fighter losing to Usyk. Now, is Andy Ruiz a great? Will Andy Ruiz go down as a great? Absolutely not, right? Will Daniel Dubois go down as a great? Well, he's not there yet. He might. But in my opinion, Daniel Dubois is a good young fighter on a roll at the moment, momentum behind him. But I don't see him as a great. He's had a couple of losses. Again, one of those losses was to Usyk. The other was to a prime Joe Joyce. So, he can still go on to be a great, but I just don't see him as a great. When I say great, I'm talking about Rocky Marciano, right? Cassius Clay or Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, right? Holyfield, Tyson, Frazier, whatever, like that's what the caliber I mean by great. I wouldn't call anyone a great who can't be mentioned along with those names. And for me, Joshua can't be mentioned with those guys. So let's look at his best wins, okay? His best wins are Vladimir Klitschko, Alexander Povetkin, maybe Joseph Parker, and the rematch against Ruiz. Those are Anthony Joshua's best wins. He also has decent wins over Pulev. Who else? Dillian White, but I'm not going to include that one because Dillian White was green, right? Dillian White, when those 2 fought, they were both green. They were both up-and-coming fighters. So I can't really consider that. I can say that's a decent win, but I wouldn't even say that's a good win because at that time, Dillian White wasn't the fighter that he became. And in my opinion, Dillian White has never been a great fighter. He's really overachieved. For the skill set he has, he's massively overachieved. So yeah, those are Joshua's 4 best wins, and let's look at the context of those wins. Firstly, Vladimir Klitschko, right? Now, this is the fight that catapulted Joshua to being the name in the heavyweight division. The fight has often been called the fight that brought back the heavyweight division. Yeah, Joshua gets a lot of credit for that win over Klitschko. But if we examine that win, let's see what we find. Well, first off, Vladimir Klitschko was 41 years of age. Okay, that needs to be said. This isn't a prime Klitschko. This is an old Klitschko. Way past his prime. The fight before Joshua, he lost to Fury, right? And he was completely outclassed. Fury beat Klitschko 11 rounds to 1 in their fight. Before that, Klitschko struggled against Bryant Jennings. Bryant Jennings isn't even a good fighter. You know, Bryant Jennings is a C-class fighter, a C-level fighter, right? Bryant Jennings gave Klitschko a tough fight over 12 rounds. Then Klitschko fought Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury absolutely outclassed him. So Klitschko's going into the Joshua fight, Klitschko had back-to-back poor performances. He was over the hill, 41 years of age, and on top of that, he was out of the ring for a whole year before the Joshua fight. Okay? So the version of Klitschko that Joshua beat, even though we can say that Klitschko is a great name on the record, that's definitely true. And I do give Joshua credit for winning that fight because Klitschko was still good, but it was no longer a great Klitschko. It was a over the hill, out of his prime, good Klitschko, right, that Joshua beat. And even in that fight, Joshua was dropped. He went down hard. He did well to come back. But let's look at it. He almost lost to a Klitschko that was 41 years old, out of the ring for a whole year, coming into that fight off the back of 2 bad performances. Okay, so we can give Joshua credit for that win, for sure. And it was a entertaining fight. But that to me is not a great win. It's a good win, not a great win. Okay, and that's Joshua's best win. Okay, so that's not a great win. Let's look at Povetkin, 39 years old when he fought Joshua. Again, like Klitschko, way past his prime. Not the fighter he was 5 to 10 years earlier. Povetkin as well, a small man for the heavyweight division. Enough said on that. 39-year-old Povetkin, not a great win. Good win, decent win, not a great win against that version of Povetkin. Joseph Parker, I call him Average Joe Journeyman Parker, because even though Joseph Parker has some good attributes, he's got a good chin, good speed, good boxing ability, I've always seen him as an average fighter, right? Average Joe. Because he's never looked spectacular in any fight. He's sort of just done enough to get some wins, like the wins over Chisora. Actually, I thought he lost the first fight to Chisora. He's looked average against average opposition. Yeah, Joseph Parker is not a world beater. He was very lucky to get that win over Ruiz to actually hold a title. So yeah, that win for Joshua, again, not a great win, not a win over a great opponent. And lastly, Andy Ruiz. Firstly, Joshua lost to Andy Ruiz the first time. In the rematch, Andy Ruiz was a fat slob, okay? He was a pig in the rematch. He came into that rematch off the back of partying, drinking, eating. He was at his absolute worst in that second fight with Joshua. And Joshua had to move around and box to get that win. You know, it wasn't the most impressive win. So there you go, you know, the facts are the facts. I gave you Joshua's 4 best wins, and I can't name a great win amongst them. For me, Joshua, again, has always been a solid, good fighter, similar to a Errol Spence, right? Errol Spence is a good, solid fighter, but we saw what happened when he fought a great. I'm hesitant to say even Crawford is a great, but Crawford's definitely a level above Spence, and we saw what happened to Spence when he stepped in there with that sort of level. He got demolished. And that's what's happened to Joshua against Dubois. Okay, Dubois is not a great fighter. Joshua is not a washed fighter. It is just that Joshua was never that great. Joshua, I mean, I just named his best wins, and he doesn't have a great win there. He fought 4 tomato cans before stepping in with Dubois, and we saw what happened. So that's the way I see it, you know. Joshua, he's overachieved. He's always been a good, solid fighter. But in particular, that win over Vladimir Klitschko, an old Vladimir Klitschko that was in bad form, a year out of the ring, that win made Joshua look better than he actually was. Right? That win catapulted him into a position of being the star of the heavyweight division. But for me, he was never a great. He was never the best in the division. People have claimed his resume is great, and he's been the best fighter in the heavyweight division. I urge you to look at his record and look at it with the context, like I have. Old Klitschko, old Povetkin, average Joe Parker, a fat Ruiz. These are his best wins. So yeah, all credit to AJ for overachieving and having a good career. But to me, he was always an overhyped fighter. Alright, let me know what you think.